This is a special edition of the Houndsman XP podcast because we've got a legislative emergency in Utah. I've got Cory Huntsman on the podcast to talk to you about what's going on out there, give you a full breakdown, and give you the lowdown. This thing's getting a lot of coverage, which it should. We talked about it on Monday with Ivan Carter, which was kind of a precursor for today's conversation with Cory. And he's going to give you a lot of information on how you can get involved. And this is a nationwide deal, folks. Utah legislators have passed this bill, House Bill 469. It is sitting on the governor's desk right now. There's a couple options the governor has at this point. He can either go ahead and sign it, he can veto it, or he can just let it sit, and next week it will go into effect. It'll go ahead and automatically go into law. This should be an alarm for everyone across the country about the mismanagement of our wildlife and how politicians are trying to manage our wildlife and shutting the professionals out. You should be concerned. This is not the North American model for wildlife conservation. This is not where we have drawn our expertise and built the most successful wildlife populations in the world. We have a chance here. It's not over yet, but time is running out, and Utah Houndsmen and mountain lions need your help in the state of Utah. You can check out our social media pages. We just dropped a bunch of information there about vetoing House Bill 469 with a link. It's easy, folks. All you got to do is click on the link in our post on Houndsman XP podcast on Facebook, find it on Instagram, and just work your magic. Hit the link, put your name in, put your email address in, put veto House Bill 469 in the comment box. This is not good for wildlife. This is not good for mountain lions. This is not good for Utah. That's all I did. It took me less than 3 minutes to do it. It doesn't matter that you're not from Utah. You're a concerned citizen of the United States of America, and it's time to exercise your rights and your freedoms to have a voice in the political process. It also gives us the opportunity to make a stand and tell politicians that they need to keep their mitts off our wildlife. Let the professionals do their job. The only thing that their job should be is to provide the funding, approve the funding, and send it over so that the experts and the professionals can manage our wildlife. Folks, this is a good podcast, a lot of information in it. I hope you've listened to all the podcasts that were released this week in reference to this. I know that W dropped one. I hope you listened to it. Ivan Carter talked about it on Monday on this podcast, on the Houndsman XP podcast. Go back and take a listen to that. He covers that, but he covers so many other things too. So a lot of good information there. Ivan Carter is a worldwide well-known conservationist. He's seen a lot of stuff, and he's got a lot of good insight for us. And he is very concerned about this bill, as he stated Monday, and you should be too. I'm not going to drag this out real long, but I did need to put a little monologue up front to make sure that you're tuning into this and listening. These things follow a pattern. They get trendy. We don't need politicians from other states looking at this and thinking, that's a good idea. Let's line our pockets with money from other industries that are being impacted by the mountain lion. And my biggest fear, and this may be total conspiracy, but think about this for a second. You take the number one apex predator off of the landscape in Utah, and now you've got the same ag community that wants to eliminate the lion, complaining about deer damage and competing for grass and everything else. And the stage is ripe for Center for Biological Diversity or one of these other groups to swoop in and say, have we got a deal for you? Let's introduce wolves. I'm telling you, folks, you got to be on point here. I'm not going to drag this out. Here's Cory Huntsman. Thanks for listening to the Houndsman XP podcast. Take action today.
Morning, Chris.
Morning, Cory. How you doing, man?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing real good. How'd the banquet go?
And it went awesome. Probably the biggest banquet. Not probably. It was the biggest banquet we've ever had.
It was?
Yeah, we had a better turnout than we've ever had, and by far we've raised more money this year than we ever have. So it was great to see all the support come in, especially at this time of need.
Oh, there's definitely a time of need, and that's what we're talking to you about today. Is this is kind of a houndsman alert. You know, I think there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about today, and a lot of it's been covered. You know, we had Ivan Carter on Monday, and I think didn't W drop a podcast this week about the issue?
They did, yep.
Yeah. So I don't want to be redundant and cover everything, but I think all the press we can get is good press for this issue. And I'm going to let you kind of, steer us through this whole thing and let us know what's going on in Utah. And that way, since I haven't had a chance to listen to W's podcast, so I don't know what you guys covered and what you didn't, or if there's something else you need to throw in there. But so we got Cory Huntsman on the podcast, and Cory, you're the president of the Utah Houndsman Association, right?
Yep, that's right.
I mean, how could you not be the president with a last name like Huntsman?
Yes, it's a curse, I guess. Yeah.
The only way it could be any more fitting if it was Houndsman, but I don't know anybody with that last name. So,
yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. So, just give us some backstory real quick. Whereabouts you at in Utah? What's your life? 3-minute life story, Cory.
Well, I live in Erta, Utah, just kind of northwest part of the state. I'd lion and bear hunt for about 20 years with hounds. I breed and raise my own kind of line of dogs. Been president of the Hound Association the last 3 years.
They haven't got tired of you yet, huh?
I'm hoping they will.
No doubt, man.
It's a lot of work, but I think if everybody can dedicate a few years to pitching in and helping with an association, everybody kind of paid back and take their turn. That's what'll keep these associations going. And it is definitely my turn. I hunted a long time and just kind of kept to myself, and it was certainly my turn to step up and help out.
So, yeah, do you guys were you mentored into that program? That's why I'm kind of curious about this. A lot of time these organizations that I've seen in the past kind of become these, power vacuums where people want to stay in charge, and so they don't really mentor the next generation coming up. So you've been a president for 3 years. Did you have a mentor in this thing or kind of pave the way for you here?
No, unfortunately, no, honestly. And
it's threw you to the fire.
Well, yeah, and it was a rough start for all of us. I think I made some mistakes going in early on, and our board kind of clashed, and then we kind of realized we're all after the same goal, just different approaches to get there, and we got aligned a little bit better after a couple of years, and we're stronger than ever for it. I wish that we had a mentor to kind of steer us into it, and unfortunately we did it the hard way. I mean, the club's been going for several years, but
hey, at least you didn't get elected because you were the guy that wasn't at the meeting, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I've seen that before. Who's not here? Let's nominate them, vote them in, and then you get a phone call that says, "Congratulations."
Yeah. Well, everyone was on the call that day when we picked, unfortunately, so we couldn't throw anybody into it.
Oh man. Well,
That's good though.
you guys have certainly been getting a lot of press out there with, everything that's going on in Utah right now. And like I said before, I mean, all the press we can get on this thing is good press for houndsmen. If nothing else, to let people know what's happening and to make sure that people are on point and not allowing this same thing to happen in their state, whether it's eliminating your lion season altogether or, just blowing the lid off of it like Utah's trying to do. So break down the issue real quick for us, Cory.
Well, I'll tell you
You
what
probably
happened.
can't do it real quick. I'm sorry. You break down the issue. What are you guys facing?
So we're facing a legislative bill that was slipped in at the last hour of the session on a completely unrelated bill. We didn't see it coming. I mean, there was a little bit of talk here and there the week of that somebody might slip it in, but honestly, the one rumor I heard, I was not that afraid, because the rumor I heard was a senator was going to try to slip it in the last hour that would totally take the protection off the lions. And the reason I wasn't that afraid of that was because the wool growers would not get paid on a suspected lion kill if that were to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, man, that this will get shut down. But the way they did it, requiring a small games license, they still get paid. And I mean, about the only thing that's not regulated on them would be hunting at night. I mean, that's about the only difference. Now, I'm hearing that their wildlife board might have some controls over this, depending on if it's, and the legislators can come back and say, no, that's not how we meant for the bill to be interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to, if the governor does sign, we're going to try to get some controls in place. But the way it's written, it's open to kill females, kittens, snares, traps, unlimited bag limits, year-round quotas. And our media is kind of portraying it goofy. It seems like
what are they saying about it?
Well, their headlines are extending the seasons from 7 to 12 months, and that's hardly the issue. I mean, lions are hard to hunt in the summer. So,
mm-hmm.
I mean, year-round seasons aren't really that scary. 67% of our state is already in a year-round season with up to 2 lions. The legislators got us on a bill a couple of years ago that kind of forces the division to open up a unit to unlimited tags if the deer herd's under objective. And it's supposed to be if lions are a limiting factor, but it's, they get so much pressure from these guys, from these legislators, that they went way overboard on it, basically. Yeah. So we're already hard enough on the lions. I'm definitely for finding a predator-prey balance where we're not going to suppress a deer herd or keep it from growing. But there is that balance where you can have both. And that's what the Utah Houndsman Association stands for. And in fact, we're part of a study with one of our university, actually both universities here that have a wildlife program are involved in cougar and bear studies. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're actually getting pretty close at finding that predator-prey balance where we can actually put some science behind these quotas. And unfortunately, this bill kills all of this research.
It's odd to me, and maybe something that is a good message for people out there that aren't houndsmen, or maybe even leaning towards, thinking that houndsmen are just looking up for opportunities to hunt and kill lions. You come back to the East here and, you take the raccoon seasons, and coon hunters are looking for more opportunity and availability. Our resource with the raccoon is definitely not the same. It's not as fragile as trying to manage for a mountain lion season. But back East, we're trying to get seasons opened up and more liberal. And in the West, we've got houndsmen stepping up and saying, no, we don't need to be killing any more lions. And I think that's a powerful message. It speaks well for us as houndsmen, because, we don't want to kill more lions. We want to take care of them. We are the managers and we're the most concerned. I think that's a great point.
It is. I agree with you. And it is a misconception that when you want to kill them all and bloodthirsty hunters, but just like any conservation group, they care about the animal more than, I don't know if we care about them more, but we do more to protect them than any other group. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's, you see houndsmen coming out that are like, no, we need to take care of this resource. And I always go back and tell people, you know, there isn't anybody that cares more about wildlife than hunters do. You know, I don't care what sticker you've got on the back of your Subaru. You know, you don't care more about wildlife than what hunters do. There's no way. This is our whole life. We do this every day.
Well, and how is any conservation funded? I mean, that we wouldn't have animals, we wouldn't have habitat if it wasn't for hunters. And those hikers and mountain bikers and rock climbers that are utilizing the land aren't putting in a thing towards preserving wildlife.
I don't know, but I don't know that I want them to either, you know, because when you start charging them permits and backpack taxes, that was being kicked around probably 4 or 5 years ago. Haven't heard that term for a while, but everybody was talking about backpack taxes. And when you give those people a seat at the table, holy smoke, that worries me. That worries me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, 100%. Utah tried to pass the thing, and maybe it's passed. Haven't really followed up on it, but for our people using our wildlife management areas owned by the Fish and Game, they tried to pass a deal where they had to have a hunting license to use it, whether they hunt it or not, and they really pushed back hard. And yeah, to your point, I kind of agree with you. I'm glad that they did push back on that. And they don't have a seat at the table.
I'm good if they require them to have a hunting license. You know, that has, you know, I guess they could still get a voice that way. But when you set up, if your state legislators would come out and say, hey, we're going to do a backpack tax, a land use tax, holy smoke, you know, a land use permit. And I don't know, you can't. Last time I was on in the Hoosier National, you know, walking down the one of the Mount Nebo trails, I was walking in there to squirrel hunt, and it was like walking down the interstate, dodging mountain bikes and stuff, you know, and I was like, holy cow, what's happened here?
Oh yeah. It's where we collar these lions. It's kind of on an urban interface area. And in the mornings you get up early and can beat them all, but coming back down, it's a steady flow of traffic.
Yeah, for sure. So let's ask, where are you guys at? I mean, give us an update. Where are you at on this whole thing? What's the process look like? It's been passed by the House and Senate. Where's this bill at it? Because it's still a bill. It's not a law yet.
Correct. As of Monday, it hit the governor's desk. He has till the 23rd to veto it, sign it, or just not do anything, and then it'll go to law May 3rd. There's rumors of an emergency wildlife board meeting that would pop up to kind of set controls, some type of controls in this for May 3rd. But there's also pushback on that. I'm hearing the only way they can push an emergency meeting through would be if there's a threat to the species. And that's, I think, why there's pushback, because if they admit that there's a threat to the species, then there'd be a definite reason to void the bill.
Yeah.
Veto the bill, I mean. So it's a tricky situation that's drawn a ton of attention from the antis, which, you know, on one hand, you're like, good, let the legislators see what they've created. And then the other hand, you don't want them storming, you know, the Capitol and try to get a ballot initiative going or something. But luckily, Utah, several years back, they passed a law that Proposition 5, it passed a bill, Proposition 5, that requires a 2/3 majority vote for any wildlife change. So, I mean, even if they did come, we're still protected in Utah somewhat, but you have to worry about things like the Forest Service. I mean, this kind of push from the antis could get the Forest Service to ban trapping, and and we don't want to hurt the trappers. I
Right.
trap, my kids trap. But with them allowing this bill allowing trapping of mountain lions, I mean that's a bad look for trappers. It really is. Big cats pull on people's heartstrings so bad. The first time one of these hikers walks up and finds a kitten in a trap, I mean, all hell's going to break loose.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think the reason that Texas has held on to their trapping and their mountain lions for so long is because there's so much private property in Texas. I think they're only like 3% public property. It's really low. And so the public doesn't have access to those ranches and things like that in that backcountry area. Whereas in Utah, I mean, where do you guys rank? You guys are way up there on public land, and it's open to anybody.
It is, and especially since COVID, it's getting used. I don't know what happened through COVID, but people are recreating outside a lot more, 10 times more than I've ever seen. You can hardly get away from them anywhere you go. So they're going to stumble upon these cats in traps. But even to speak to Texas, we've had some deer hunters reach out and say, "God, you guys are doing this backwards. We're trying to get lions on a big game list because we're worried we're not going to be able to kill them at all if we don't. We won't be able to manage them all." So they're getting so much negative attention, even with all that private property. And Utah's going backwards here. I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, like in your Ivan's show, he came out to Collar with us, and world-renowned conservationist and been in all kinds of studies and sees the importance worldwide of research and putting sportsman dollars to work to learn more about finding this predator-prey balance and the right populations. And we're going back to the Stone Age. We have data showing where we need to put pressure on lions and where it's not helping. Mm-hmm. And these two legislators that slipped this bill in, they're not biologists. They didn't seek out our Division of Wildlife or our universities doing these studies. They just catered to their buddies' interest with their big ranches that are getting $15,000 per deer tag, and they think one lion's too many because it's potentially costing them money. And
what is this going to do to that study base and the data that can be collected? What's going to happen to mountain lion management in Utah if this thing goes through?
There won't be any. There's the funding's through the big game department. Mm-hmm. So this classifies a lion as a small game animal. So that automatically takes the funding away from it. But besides that, I mean, you can't learn anything about a lion having it collared for 3 weeks. We had a law passed after we got this lion study going to make it illegal to kill lions for 3 or 4 years. Collared lions, I'm sorry.
Collared lions.
Yeah, and we're only talking about 30 to 50 lions statewide that this protects. It's not end all for deer by doing it, but man, we had one lion we collared in Provo, Utah, which is kind of north central, right along our I-15 corridor. It went all the way up mid-Wyoming, back down to our eastern side of the state, and almost made it to Kansas.
No kidding.
It made it just west of Denver, and it got killed. Another lion killed a 2.5-year-old female. It's kind of a weird deal, but if she was collared for 2 months, we would have never seen her leave Provo, the original area she was collared in. So what you're saying is, if we take the restrictions off the lion in Utah, then all of a sudden there's no sense in going out and catching lions and put collars on them. If they're just open season, they can be killed in the next day. Exactly. It'll end the study.
Yeah,
we'll pull the plug on it for sure. There's too much money and time involved to even, just a waste of time.
Well, okay. So what other kinds of information? Why should a deer or an elk hunter or a bighorn sheep hunter or whatever out there, other hunting groups, why should they care about this bill that's in Utah right now?
Well, this affects every sportsman, every tax-paying citizen, really. When legislators can start passing wildlife bills with no biology behind them, I mean, that should scare everybody. And we see it different in every state. We're fighting for less killing. I guess I'm having a hard time articulating it, but we're fighting our legislators not to take the sport away, but to keep animals on the landscape so we can keep hunting them, where it seems like most states are fighting to keep their sport legal, to the ability to run dogs or hunt
Right. Yeah.
legal. And these guys don't want to take it from us. I mean, we're good that way, but
the way I look at it, Cory, I see you guys fighting for science-based wildlife management, actual wildlife management, not, the perceived management. You're not looking at, you were talking about increased killing and stuff like that. And you guys are not trying to stand up and say, hey, don't kill our lions. You're saying, hey, if we're going to kill lions, let's do it the smart way and not just open it up and have a free for all and war on the mountain lion.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, when the antis do come to shut you down, to question why are we killing lions, we'll have no science or data. We'll just, because lions are bad, lions eat deer, so we're killing them all. Before, right. With science-based data, you can explain why we're killing lions and show that there is a balance, there is a need for them, but there is a need to manage them as well. And without that, when legislators start managing your wildlife, there is no science behind it. And I think every state's seeing it. I mean, you hear about another wildlife bill being passed monthly, it seems like, across the nation. And I just don't think they have a place in wildlife. We have an awesome system in Utah, public process. On any big change or management plan, we have a committee formed with every stakeholder, from land, federal land agencies, private landowners, wool growers, cattlemen, hunters, sportsmen, houndsmen, and we get invited to these committees, and there's usually 4 or 5 meetings across the state for 4 hours apiece. And then the middle ground that we come up with in these committees, they run through a RAC process, with a regional advisory committee, and we have 5 different regions in the state. And so every region in the state allows public input, and our state game agency explains why they're proposing what they're proposing. So the public's really involved. And then the final step is our wildlife board. Some people call it a commission, but our wildlife board's made up of 7 guys. And there's one more last chance for public input and education of why the recommendations are being made. And then the wildlife takes all the information and they vote on it. And like you said, it's not a perfect system, but it's pretty dang good. I mean, if you want to be involved, they'll involve you with it. But the way this is going about, it completely eliminates any of this public input, public education, and you're at the mercy of, we're, like Ivan said in your last podcast, we're out politicking this. And if one message can be brought from this is, sportsman groups, whether you're houndsman or deer hunters, whatever your group is, man, you gotta make friends in the legislature, or you're going to get walked all over. And that was definitely where we're sorry to cut you off. That's definitely our shortcomings.
There's even politics on these wildlife boards, though. Really, I mean, you can't just, there's a lot of backroom meetings and stuff, and a lot of things that are decided before, your wildlife board or your wildlife commission comes down and makes their final recommendation to the department. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but politics aren't just limited to our legislators. There's a lot of politics that go on. Hey, I'll vote for this and support this if we can get money for quail research, or brown trout, or whatever it is.
Yeah, without a doubt. And over the last few years, we've really built up a good relationship with our Division of Wildlife and Wildlife Board, and we're in a good place with them. But this legislative stuff is completely foreign to us. We didn't see it coming. We should have been prepared. You see it all across the nation, and that's something that we need to figure out, but we're a long ways from there right now. And unfortunately,
well, the problem
that's
is,
what we're fighting now.
yeah, the problem is, Cory, you know, you've got a job that the Utah Houndsman Association doesn't keep the lights on at your house or put food on your table. And so there's only, and I'm sure all your board members are exactly like that. Whereas the people that are trying to interfere with this stuff, they've got staff, you know, they've got people that can look at these issues and strategize, and they're professional. That's what they do for a living. What do you do for a living?
I'm a emergency coordinator for a tech company.
Yeah. So, you know, you're an expert in that field and you're learning this other stuff. I think that's why it's so important that everybody, these hound organizations have got so many skilled people. And if everybody would show up and say, houndsmen in general, you know, the whole hunting community has got so many skilled people that if everybody just did a little bit and contributed in a little bit of a way, we could really stay ahead of a lot of this stuff. And then we're not strapping our directors and our officers and these hound organizations with all this stuff and then pointing the fingers at them when things go wrong. So
Yeah.
I don't want you to say, yeah, you made a comment that sparked that. You said, you know, we should have been in front of it, like you're taking blame for this, but I've watched you guys for a long time, and you guys work hard. You've got a good reputation. You know, you're doing things right, and you just can't catch everything because you just can't. You can't catch everything. So don't be too hard on yourself, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It is tough, but you know, when something like this does happen, it you take the blame or not, it does show you where your downfall, your shortcomings are, and where you need to strengthen your group. But it is tough with the job and fighting. I mean, we're fighting the wool growers and the Cattlemen Association and the four most powerful legislators.
Professionals.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
guys that old guys favor and have a lot of money, and you know, and it'll take a miracle to get this vetoed. That's for sure.
Does the Utah Houndsman Association, do you guys have a paid lobbyist that works for you out there?
We don't. Well, I'm meeting with one today, so
I guarantee you that the cattlemen and the wool growers, they've got lobbyists that are working in their interests. And I think there's an opportunity. We've featured, you know, Protect a Harvest there. And you would think that with as many common enemies as we have, hunters and the ag community, ranching community have, you know, we could find some common ground and not be trying to kill each other all the time.
yeah, I agree. That's a problem. We should be all on the same side, but
the same people that are coming and saying that, you know, you shouldn't castrate a calf are the same people that say you shouldn't be treating a mountain lion with a hound. You know,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
You know, and you shouldn't ride your horse. Oh, you shouldn't work your dog. Same group of people. Let's all get on the same page here.
I think, you know, as good as Bill's Proposition 5 is, it when it passed, we were right on the verge of losing trapping and hound hunting. So it was a saving grace. It really was. But it also lets these guys know that they don't need to unite right now. I think we've got another 30 years before the demographics. You know, it could change really fast, especially with a bill like this. It could really speed that up. But that's their security. They tell us they have 30 years before they have to worry about that. And they don't think they need us right now. But
well, I'll tell you, man, that's a common problem. We dealt with that in Indiana, you know, just getting people involved. Your average deer hunter doesn't belong to any organization because there's not a need. There's deer everywhere, you know. The hook and bullet crowd's pretty much asleep at the switch because of all the great work that the North American model has done for wildlife in this country. And, you know, people are starting to wake up to it, but by and large, I mean, the hunters and fishermen have been asleep at the switch, and they're just out there, you know, casting a line in the stream and walking through the woods and setting up their tree stands and doing whatever and saying, man, this is great. And they're not looking down the road. They're not seeing that big picture. No,
and it's easy to do.
You bet. Yep, for sure. For sure. So how do we get here? I mean, how do we get to this point where we've allowed the science-based North American model to be cast aside to let people, make decisions on wildlife that have no knowledge of wildlife? How do we get here, Cory?
Well, the ballot box. I mean, it's who we voted in. This is the fourth year in a row we've seen these legislators get their fingers into, various wildlife related issues, and they keep getting voted back in. We need to pay attention and get out and vote, and I think point out to the public, let this, be seen what these guys are doing. If you hunters that are out just casting your line and sitting in your stands, and that these guys are affecting you. They're going to affect the way you can hunt and when you can hunt and what you can hunt. If you continue to vote them in, they have their own narrative, and I don't know how else to stop them other than to vote them out.
It's such this whole political arena this day and age is such it's just a quagmire, really. I'll just talk about Indiana. We have had a dominant majority conservative legislature and governor's office for, I'm trying to think the last time we had a Democrat governor here. And as sportsmen, we always jump on those bandwagons. I'm not going to try to make this a Republican Democrat thing at all, but I think we need to I worry because I see things more concerned about the dollars that corporate America can bring in, the capitalism side of it. And I sound like a daggone Marxist right now, and I hate it. But as sportsmen, we have to pay attention to that and really challenge these conservatives and our legislators to act in the best interest on all things, not just special interests that's going to get them reelected. That's a tough one, man.
It is, and it's not something that we're all rednecks.
Absolutely.
Try to figure out this world is tough.
Second Amendment supporters and freedom of speech and all this other stuff that goes right along with, it's basically the fabric that makes us up more. We just like for everybody to leave us alone. We'll take care of this. There's no sense of weaponizing this issue and making a political issue. We can handle it, but it's just gotten crazy.
Yeah, I agree. It's getting tough to fight when they take it to this level. It's really disheartening to see, to be honest with you. We have a paid wildlife game agency with skilled biologists, and what's the point of having them if we save taxpayers a lot of money if we can get rid of the Division of Wildlife and just let these legislators tell us what's best for wildlife, I guess.
Man. Yeah. And you talk about the paid professionals. Let's talk about them a little bit. Where are they at on this thing that you know of? And don't throw anybody under the bus. We don't want to jeopardize anybody's job or anything like that. But
they're in a bad situation. They really are. This is a slap in the face to them. But our Fish and Game takes direction from the legislators. So it's basically, they, without trying to throw anybody under the bus, they can't really push back on this. They can a little bit, but for the most part,
just tell us why. I want everybody to understand why they can't push back.
They in all reality, they control their jobs. They have to say who works for the Fish and Game and who doesn't. If they don't agree with it, they can put enough pressure on the division to get people fired from the very top down to the very bottom. And these guys are terrified of them. And so they go along with it because they don't have a choice. And it's the process. They do take direction from legislators, unfortunately.
I'm a little more independent here, where I can be a little more free, and I'll just tell you what I've seen. I'm not in fear of my voice not being heard by a legislator. I hope they are listening. Um, but what I've seen, the way they control that is through funding. So you get a biologist out here that's beating the drum, that shows up, and he starts, he's waving this, don't support this bill. He's out there in the public eye and doing interviews, and he's just exercising his rights as an American to voice his opinion. Well, what happens is the guy that is the head of the Resources Commission sees this, gets it brought to his attention, and he's buddies with the guy from the wool growers, and the guy from the wool growers sees it and calls this other, the legislator, and says, hey, you need to shut him up. So they call over to the department and they say, hey, you need to shut him up, or you're not going to get funded next year. That's how the pressure works.
It's horrible. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I read a couple of the local articles where the division was supporting this, basically. I mean, it really looked that way. And I was on my way to talk to a different local reporter, and I called them on my way in. I said, oh, am I burning bridges for you guys? They said, no, not at all. Why? And I said, you guys upset the way I'm fighting this? And they said, no, we're cheering you on. This was a slap in the face to us. And I said, God, you'd never know it by reading your articles. And they said, well, we take direction from the legislators, and we don't have a choice on this. So I do feel for them. They're in a bad position. I mean, they went to school for this. They're on the mountain constantly working hard and trying to do the best they can to manage our game the way that they think it's the data backs it up and supports. And these guys can just override them. And if they have anything to say about it, then they potentially lose their job. So
yeah,
it's a horrible deal.
It's easy for us to sit back and say, well, that biologist out there, he works for me, and he needs to voice his opinion. And, if he really believes in this, he'll find another job, and you got to make sacrifices and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you're talking about a guy that's got years of training. And I'll get back up a little bit. And houndsmen, biologists are easy targets for us houndsmen, as like, and game wardens are too. But any wildlife professional is an easy target. And how many people do you have show up at your banquet?
I think we had right around maybe just shy of 550 this year.
Yeah. And how many houndsmen are in the state of Utah? Estimate.
I bet you we're close to 1,000.
That's a pretty daggone good return right there. You guys are doing things right, and that tells me. But a lot of times you see, these hound organizations, and you have people that show up, and then there's a bunch of people that won't show up. So for a houndsman to sit back and say, oh, he ought to just sacrifice his job, they won't even show up to a banquet a lot of times to support what's going on. They won't spend $100 to support the cause, but they're all about this biologist sacrificing his job for the good of the cause.
Well, yeah. And that, we did have a huge turnout this year, but you got to think that's wives and kids, or husbands and kids. And, so we probably had about 300 houndsmen out of the 1,000, honestly. And you're exactly right. It is easy to point the finger when they're not willing to do anything in return. And I didn't realize, until I started collaring these lions with them, and I go out on the deer captures, collar deer with them, and we take our mules, and I've done elk classification and just been in the field with them quite a bit. After you make friends with them when you start collaring.
Yeah.
And you get invited to more things. And, houndsmen spend a lot of time away from their families on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have us beat. I guarantee it. I don't care how hard of a houndsman and how much you hunt. These guys are on the mountain more than us, at least here in Utah. And I was shocked because I've cursed them for managing wildlife out of their office before, before
mm-hmm.
I actually saw what went into it. And I I don't always agree with them, and that's where the public process comes in, where you can have a little say from your point of view. But boy, I do trust them more than I did before I started working with them. I think they are the experts. And their voice should be heard.
That is, yeah, I think that's a good message right there. You know, I'll tell you right now, biologists, we've got Seth Hall's a biologist, and he's an anomaly because he's actually entertaining to listen to. But most biologists don't care about the messaging. You know, they're scientists. They're out there to gather data. They're very passionate about what they do. If they've got a specialty, they're good at what they do. And sometimes the messaging breaks down. They don't want to be the guy in front of the public. They just want to go back out and gather more data. And they're a special breed for sure.
For the amount of school they have to go to and the amount of time away from their family and on the mountain and the pay that they get in return. I mean, it's obvious they do it because they love wildlife. That's no other reason.
I think there's a big trend out there though, to think that these biologists are working against us and against hunters. And you've seen the opposite of that, right?
I can't speak to other states, but in Utah, I don't know one of our biologists that is not a hunter, which is great. Even our law enforcement is all hunters. So no, to say they're working against hunters, I don't agree with that at all here.
You know, when I was working at, and I'm not trying to make this about me, but I knew several people like you just described. You know, I didn't know any biologists that weren't hunters, and they cared so much about it that they were willing to go out and get an education and make it their life's profession. And I saw so many of our officers that the reason they're hard on hunters is because they're a hunter too, and they were just saying, hey, you want to come out here and not be a jackass, you don't get to represent me and other hunters. And so that's a lot of what motivates these guys. It's like, hey, we're out here, we're doing our job, we're serious about it. And you take some of these biologists, they're smart enough, they could have been nuclear physicists and making, 6 or 7 figures a year in the private sector. And yet their passion was for wildlife and making a difference there. And I think they deserve our respect.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's the process now, Cory? I mean, where are we at? What are we looking at? What do houndsmen need to do right now to, can other states help you? What do we need?
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind posting the link, I'll text it to you when we're off of this call. And it's a simple click of a button and you just send an email. You don't have to put your address or anything. Just put your name and your comment and just ask the governor to veto House Bill 469. Just to let the biologists make the decisions, or manage wildlife, not legislators.
Yeah. So will it matter if a guy from Bear Branch, Indiana sends an email to the governor of Utah?
Nope, not at all.
You don't think it'll matter?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you meant hurt. I'm sorry. No, it won't hurt a bit. Yes. Heck yeah, it'll matter. It's you still have the money and the power being pressured on the governor. But I think enough public feedback is going to make him think about it. And I know it is making him think about it. We've been in contact with his office, and they said they're getting a ton of calls both directions, which to me just shows even more reason to veto this and run it through the public process. So absolutely, I think it helps if houndsmen will take 5 minutes and shoot an email in. I mean, it's really a simple form.
Yeah.
Doesn't require any real personal information other than your name.
Yeah. So this link will take me to a prepared email that says, hey, governor, don't do this. I'm against this. And it's already written for me. All I got to do is fill in my name and a little bit of personal information, nothing in depth, and shoot that in, and he's going to get that information across his desk.
It's not a filled out email. All it is you put your name and just like an email, it has a subject line. Just in the subject, just put please veto House Bill 469. And then in the comments, you can put as little as much as you want. I think basically they're reading the subject line only. So if you just put please veto House Bill 469, that's plenty.
Yeah. Probably less is best on this whole thing. Veto 469 and then say I'm a concerned citizen and this is not good for wildlife. And that's really all you need to say. If you try to write a book, they're not going to read it for one. But unless you're a wildlife biologist or a professional politician, you might do more damage than you do good.
Yeah, it's true. And, there's emails people that he's seeking out for their opinion that he'll sit and read. But I think for the most part, he'll just see for or against and kind of tally them up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what else you got? What else you got for us, Cory? What would you go ahead? You say, no. I'm going to turn you loose right there. And then I'm going to ask you one more question. We'll wrap her up. Cause I know you got meetings today.
Really, if, like you said earlier, if anybody can learn from this bad deal that we're going through, just strengthen your associations. If you're not part of a hound association, I think it is important to join them, whether you agree with them or not. I mean, that's how you have a say, is by joining. If you're not a member, it's hard to change an association. If you don't agree with what they're doing or how they're ran, then be a part of them and get it changed and help them out. And you might find out there's a reason why they do things the way they do and understand it a little bit more too. But if we don't unite and we don't support each other, in different states, then we're going to lose quicker. I mean, we're already on the chopping block constantly. So I just urge everybody to get your associations as strong as you can and try to unite and stay close with surrounding states that you can help, because it is a domino effect. We went unlimited quotas on a few units in our state, and almost instantly Idaho did the same thing.
Yeah. And I've talked to lion hunters this past weekend while I was in Kalispell, and some of them were from Idaho, and they're very concerned about, the direction that Idaho's going with the mountain lion. So there's definitely a domino effect. And I think you answered it, get involved, if you don't like what's going on, then get involved and you be the change that you need to see. But I tell you what, man, I've seen this so many times. I was involved with the hound organization here, and you'd get some guy that got elected. He was very much loud and against what was going on. And then once he got elected to a board position and he started figuring out, oh, this isn't as simple as what I thought it was, and this is why this is done. It's an eye-opening experience for a lot of them, for sure.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story, but
yeah,
I like you said earlier, I just hunted. I kept to myself. Had maybe one or two good friends that I'd hunt with occasionally, but I didn't get online ever. I wasn't on social media, and
you're just living in your own little hound dog world, weren't you, Cory?
Yeah, and then I saw cougar increases affect my backyard one time, and boy, I got right on Facebook and cursed the Hound Association. What the hell are you guys doing, allowing this to happen? And one of them called me and said, "Man, it fits the management plan." I'm like, "Well, what's the management plan?" I didn't know what the cougar management plan was, and it was worked out, and where you can't fight that, it did fit the criteria for an increase. I didn't know why. I just knew that I was going to have a harder time finding the line in my backyard, and I didn't know anything else. But so now fast forward to while I'm on the board and sitting in the meetings and actually part of coming up with these management plans with our state agency, and it's a whole different game. And I'm getting the calls and getting cursed out for why are you supporting this? And if you're not involved, you don't know. And the more, the more you can help change. So.
Yeah. And I wish every houndsman out there would understand that the importance. Nobody's going to ask you to do it all. Just do what you can. If every houndsman would do what they can, maybe it's just forwarding stuff on social media because you're a member and you're tracking Utah Houndsman Association. Maybe it's showing up at the banquet and helping set up chairs. Maybe it's you've got a local sporting goods store that just gets one item for an auction item to take to your banquet. If everybody would just do what they can, man, we'd be so much stronger.
That's exactly right. I mean, we're all just a spoken wheel, and if everybody can just do a little bit, it goes a long ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Cory, send me that link. Matter of fact, I'll probably post it on Facebook and the social media sites today, our channels there, and get people involved. And every voice matters on this.
Yes, definitely. Yep. And I sure appreciate you doing this.
Cory, I appreciate you taking time and helping us understand what's going on there. We didn't get deep into the issue, but I think there's been enough press to understand what's going on. We just need to keep beating the drum, get involved. Don't sit back and think that somebody else is going to take care of things for you. And it may sound like a good deal. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, yeah, I can go to Utah and chase lions and do it on a small game license. What a great deal. But 5-10 years down the road, it's not going to be a good deal.
No, you'll waste a lot of gas and money coming here trying to find an easy lion, because if trapping goes through, they're not hard to trap.
Right. Well, Cory, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you taking time to be on the Houndsman XP podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure you're checking out houndsmanxp.com and a lot of good resources over there. Shop with our sponsors. They're in this fight too. And thanks for listening. This is a Houndsman XP podcast. This is Fair Chase.